Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We got quite a few people coming in, so we'll give it just a minute. But while we are waiting for everybody to come in, I have a quick disclaimer. By staying on this webinar, you realize it is being recorded and you consent to being recorded. Attendees are prohibited from making your own recordings of the online event or sharing the Cause of America recording, whether audio, video, or transcript, in whole or in part, without the express permission from Cause of America or the Lindell Defense Fund. So welcome everybody tonight. If you can let us know where you're coming from in the chat, just type it in the chat. We're also going to ask that you guys put your questions in the Q&A tab. And if for some reason that you can't, you can put them in the chat and one of our team members will make sure that we get it to Dr. Frank. And of course, our special guest, Dr. Frank. This is part 2 of Dr. Frank's series. So Vika was kind enough to put the link from part 1 in the chat. If you haven't seen that, I would suggest go see that. And Dr. Frank and I go, now I can say way back, right? We're, almost 5 years now, which is crazy.
It is crazy, yes.
I know, right? I met Dr. Frank when I was working with Audit the Vote here in Pennsylvania back in 2021, right? I think it's 2021.
March of 2021, I called you guys and we set up that first event and launched Audit the Vote PA. That was crazy.
We did, and he has been on the go ever since. Our claim to fame is that Dr. Frank started here in Pennsylvania. But it has been such a joy to see Dr. Frank across the country and what he's been able to do and help so many grassroots such as all of you that have joined the call. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, sir, because today is about you.
Well, thank you, Karen. Feel free to jump in anywhere along the line to bring me back on track because everybody knows that I'm capable of talking for hours. Somebody gave me a t-shirt that showed a graph with a tangent line on it, and it says sometimes I go off on a tangent. It's a nice pun for a math guy. But feel free to jump in because I have a lot to say and not a lot of time to do it. The nice thing is you guys gave me 2 sessions, and you guys all remember that in the last session, I covered a lot of material about voter rolls. So that's what I did last time, and I'll just very briefly review that today just to just to provide context for today. But today is really about what's the fix. All right, so we know we got a problem. The problems, there are multiple problems, about a dozen problems, let's say. I like the way Patrick Byrne says it. He says there's a dozen ways to cheat the elections, and they use whichever ones are most convenient. But what's the fix? That's where I'm coming in today. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to focus on the 7 steps early on. And then I want to talk about the 3 binders, and there's a reason for that. Last time I was there, and thank you, Vico, for putting up the Rumble link. Also, it's been making it a habit when I do a Cause of America talk that I edit it afterwards and clean it up and post it again. So that'll be coming up soon, too, on my YouTube channel, so people can look for that. You already know I'm a scientist. I've been doing that for most of my career until elections happened. Really, I'm a modeler. I model climate, I model populations, I model elections. I've been doing that crazy, it's like an obsession for me for most of my lifetime. And somebody joked about it. They said, you need a new motto, Dr. Frank. You need to quit this motto about follow the data with Dr. Frank, and you need to say, I have a graph for that, and it's probably a good motto. So if you go onto my YouTube channel, you can see all the kind of stuff I've been modeling, some great conversations we've had with Cause of America on here. And then, of course, in the early days, in fact, when it was with you, Karen, right away, that's when Mr. Lindell had discovered my work and featured it in 2 of his documentaries, Scientific Proof and Absolute Interference. And so that's kind of what launched it, especially when the president invited me to be his keynote for his first rally after out of office. Suddenly, everybody knew I was getting calls from all around the country. And I'm not kidding. It was crazy. I was just bombarded with phone calls. It was quite a challenge to decide what to do. I didn't sign up for this, but I certainly been doing it. And then since then, I've been probably met with over 100,000 people. I've given over 1,000 presentations now. I've got a PowerPoint for every one of them. Now they call me the Johnny Appleseed of election integrity. And the reason it's important that I hit this is because I need people to understand this concept for today's talk. when the New York Times did their hit piece, the Los Angeles Times did their hit piece on me a couple of years ago, they did a follow-up piece a week later, and they said, "Meet the man trying to upend voting, starting with California." And when they said that, it kind of pissed me off. It frustrated because I've been already working on this for two to 2.5 years. Ask Karen. We were there together out at the Vote PA. So what were they really saying? What they're really saying is I was having an effect in California. We've had a profound effect there. I'm glad to be up in Shasta County again. We've completely taken back local control of the elections there. With, by the way, their new clerk is Clint Curtis, and that should, all of you in election integrity should recognize that name. But it was going to be Tina Peters, but she's in jail. But we've taken over a lot of elections across the country, but I was starting to be effective there. And the reason why I was starting to be effective at that time is because all in 2021, most of us thought all we had to do was find the fraud and present it. I mean, I remember many presentations by Tony Shoup and Karen Taylor in Pennsylvania where you guys were going around showing everybody all the canvassing work you'd done. Come on. I mean, we all thought that all we had to do was show the evidence and we would win. We all thought, I must have met with 24 secretaries of state just in that year alone, sitting in their office, and we would hack into their elections right in front of their faces. So we thought, okay, that's all we have to do. But we were wrong, okay? We all had to grow up. We were pretty naive politically. They call it political science, but it ain't science. That's what I always say. If it was science, I would have kicked butt already, because that's my specialty. Anyway, so that was when that article came out, it was kind of a transition for me. I was already transitioning to grassroots work, but it hadn't really crystallized until I realized we're starting to win in California. Why? What are we doing right? Now, at the same time, I had been invited by Wayne Morrow, who's the now president of the John Birch Society, to write up this little trifold called 7 Steps Taking Back Our Elections. And he asked me, "Dr. Frank, we love the work you're doing. John Birch Society's been trying to work this way around the country for years. Can you write it up in a trifold? Because everything we do in John Birch Society is in a trifold." And so I took on the challenge, and I started writing it up. And it's important that people understand that this document is an empirical document. It's not me sitting in front of the fireplace one night with my pipe being all smarty pants. I said, well, gee, what's working around the country? And I started organizing it into a trifold, and I realized this is really hard. So I started writing what's not working in the country. And when I organized what's not working, I realized if you're missing any of these key elements, you're not going to succeed. So then it was easy to write the opposite of that, and I was organized the 7 steps. So it's important you guys realize the 7 steps is an empirical document. And it really came home to me about a year later. I was in a county with some ladies from Missouri. And they said, gee, Dr. Frank, sorry we're behind on the 7 steps on the election work. We've been busy getting pornography out of our library. And I said, congratulations, how did you do that? And they said, we use the 7 steps. And then it's like, the reason why the 7 steps works is not because it's about elections. It's because what you're doing is you're becoming the government, and you're taking back local control of your government, including local control of your elections, including local control of your libraries and your school boards and your commissioners and your county clerks, all of that. It's really what's going on. So anyway, that's kind of an introduction to what the 7 steps is, and I'm going to be covering that tonight more. So just a quick reminder, what's wrong with our elections, and I discussed that 2 weeks ago. The key problem is that in every state in America, elections are now centrally controlled by the state, which is why we've lost our constitutional voice and we're in tyranny all over the place. Now, I just returned from a 10-day trip in Colorado. Outstanding trip, by the way. I mean, that place is on fire. It's interesting because when I was first considering going to Colorado, I was hearing feedback from people, don't go, Dr. Frank, you're wasting your time. That place is under tyranny. The people are lost, they're confused, and I agree. They are. But because of the tyranny, they're awake. And it's sort of like when I used to go out to California, people say, you're wasting your time out there. Those people are awake because the tyranny is so oppressive. It wakes up the grassroots. So anyway, the problem is that I would show up in these small counties, beautiful counties, especially down in the San Luis Valley down there in Colorado. Small counties, 5,000 people in them kind of thing. And they would say, what are you doing here, Dr. Frank? We don't need you here. We have great sheriff. We have great commissioners. We have great clerk. We trust our clerk. Our sheriff is awesome. We don't need you. And it's like, wait a minute. You don't understand what the problem is. And so I would sit down and show them the problem, and then they are easy to get activated because once they realize what's wrong, they step up. So that's a key element of what I'm explaining to you guys tonight. The key element is, imagine that we're at war, World War II. Do we attack Berlin the first day? No, that would be dumb. We got to get to Normandy first. And to get to Normandy, we need infrastructure. We need intel. We need weather. We need ships. We need ammunition. We need training. So there's steps involved in the long haul to eventually get to Berlin. We don't start out in the big counties. Starting out in the small counties is a key element of the new strategy that I've been working with people. Now, it illustrates when I was there in Colorado that the clerks don't even know what's going on in their own elections. And so I have to explain to them, and then when I explain it to them, they say, that's not right, Dr. Frank. That can't be right. And so what do? I show them their own data. And I just published a graph last night for all of Colorado counties showing how much churn there is in their voter rolls. And I posted it on social media. If you want to see that, you can find that. But so I find that the first part of the 7 steps, and the first thing, what the problem is with our elections, great. We covered that last time mostly. But really, the problem is that most people don't even know what's wrong. So I end up just waking people up, red-pilling them, red-pilling clerks. One of my schedulers even coined my presentation. I have a couple of presentations I give. My red pill presentation, where I'm just waking people up to what the problem is. And the problem is even people on our side, they think they know what's wrong, and they're doing all these things trying to fix it. But no, they don't know what's wrong. Because if they knew it was wrong, they wouldn't be doing all these things. I call them hamster wheels. It's like tons of work with no effect. Einstein said the definition of insanity is just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that's what I find across the country. People are spending a lot of energy without much effect. Now, sometimes people will say to me, well, what else are we going to do, Dr. Frank? We got to do something. I think that is also a wrong-headed thing. Right in The Art of War, Sun Tzu says, move not unless you see an advantage. Use not your troops unless there is something to be gained. Fight not unless the position is critical. So in other words, we need to be smart. We need to not waste ammunition. We need to not waste energy. We need not to waste our effort on things that are not going to be productive. We need strategy. We need to think carefully about what we're going to do, and then we need to act together, just like as if we were in a war. And as a matter of fact, we are in a war. We're in a 5th generation war. Just ask General Flynn. So what's the problem? The problem is everybody's on hamster wheels. Now, not everybody. We're getting some people switched over. Now, what did Stalin say? Stalin said it's enough that the people know that there was an election. The people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. So I just simply ask you the question, when was the last time you counted votes? If you're not counting them, you're not deciding anything, okay? So the solution is to take back our country. We're going to have to get rid of the machines. We're going to have to perform our elections with our own 2 hands and our own 2 feet. That means we count with our hands and we walk to the polls with our feet. We have to do the work. And until we do that, there is no fixed. People think, oh, if we could just add signature verification. Oh, if we could just add photo ID. Oh, if we could just have paper ballots. It's like, oh, if we could just get rid of mail-in voting. No, you have to run the whole thing yourself, local. And until you do that, you're not getting anywhere. Problem is, people are confused and apathetic. I love the way General Flynn puts it. He says, everybody's just sitting there on their hands. They don't know what they're not doing. And he says, the pain level just isn't high enough yet. So now, that's why I think I'm having success in California and Colorado with the strategy that I'm describing to you guys, because the pain level is so high that people are ready for action. A lot of places I go, everything's so peachy keen, and they're like, we don't need you here, Dr. Frank. Well, yeah, you do. You just didn't know it. We need to wake up. Here's the first key idea. We the people are the sovereigns. Our Constitution was written to give us, we the people, the sovereignty. We're the kings. I love all these riots. No kings. Oh, yeah? We're the kings. Okay? We're the kings, the Constitution. But we're depraved and apathetic. We've lost our way, and because we've lost our virtue, that's a big problem. I think that a lot of our societal ills are not necessarily because of the system. It's because we're depraved as a culture, and we could go down that. And only a virtuous people are capable of freedom, as Benjamin Franklin said. The other problem is we've been letting other people run our elections. We've been letting other people teach our children. We've been letting other people run our government. And Plato said one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is you end up being governed by your inferiors. I like what Will Rogers says. There are men running governments that shouldn't be allowed to play with matches. Okay. So we are the solution. There's no silver bullet. Oh, Dr. Frank, just wait till you see this new lawsuit we got. That's going to fix everything. Oh, we got this new ballot initiative that'll fix it. Yeah, like, using broken elections to fix broken elections. No, there isn't a silver bullet. The solution is bottom up. National impact happens when we have local action, just like General Flynn's been saying, and people just don't even realize how powerful they are. If they'll just get organized locally, I've been seeing around the country. So that's the core idea, that we have to take back local control of our elections. That's the solution. When we're running our own elections with our own two hands and our own 2 feet. And I already talked last week about what the problem is, but I just want to hit a couple of quick points because it's going to come back later and for the people that are new. So I'm just going to quickly remind you that there are lots of ways to do voter roll analysis. I do all kinds of analyses. We find algorithmic manipulation, population and voter roll inflation, all kinds of things, and each one of these analyses has a purpose. Like the fact that our voter rolls are centrally controlled. And I showed you an example of how the voter rolls in Wisconsin were centrally controlled. Or the fact that our voter rolls are inflated. And here's a beautiful example in Oregon where it shows where they got more people in their voter rolls than they got people. I showed that the voter rolls are dirty. And I showed the whole country. And I showed you that the whole country is dirty. Our voter rolls are churned. And I described what churning is last week. In fact, just last night I posted this graph. Just take 1 second because nobody's seen this graph before, chance to explain it. But what it is I tracked 4 variables for every county in Colorado, and I've mapped out those variables here. The simplest one to look at is this first red peak here, where the median is 16. 16% of the people who voted in the 2020 election in every county in Colorado have since been removed from the rolls. It's very interesting. That's an interesting number because in 2021, Mike Lindell and I were both going around the country saying we thought that the cheat was about 15 or 16%. So isn't that interesting that 15 or 16% of people, that's the median. And in many counties, it's much higher. So 1 in 6 people have been removed from the rolls. Another one is how much status change there has been in the rolls. And on average, or the median I should say, is about 1 in 3 of every voter in the voter rolls in the last 4 years has changed status. And this is where it gets interesting. Only about 3 out of 4 people that were in the rolls in 2020 are still in the rolls. And this is what's very interesting, the churn. And I discussed that in more detail last time. But let me just quickly say, because then you're going to understand why this is so important. What it's showing is that the local clerks aren't in charge of their elections. When I show the local clerks all these numbers, they're like, no way, Dr. Frank, I'm the one that monitors my elections. I'm the one that adds people from the rolls. No, you're not, lady. Look at this. So, for example, the median is 83% of churn. Just to remind you what churn is. Let's say you have a county with 100 people in it, and 10 people move out and 10 people move in. You've had 20 changes out of 100. We call that a 20% churn. Well, in Colorado, the median is 83%. 83%, you've had, if you have a rolls with 100 people in it, there have been 83 names added and removed in the last 4 years. Think about that. You've had almost as many people added and removed as you have people in the rolls. There's a lot of churn going on. Now, the remainers is only 76%. So think of it this way. If you've got 75% of the people in the rolls are staying there pretty steadily, and then on top of it, there's just churn going on. And the churn that's going on is so often that in many counties, you've got over 80% of the names have changed. I mean, you've got as many changes to the roles as you have people in the roles. What's going on? How come all those names are being added and removed? It's not the local clerk doing it. That's the point. Somewhere else is doing it. And most of the time it's because the state's taken over control of the roles. They're adding everybody who gets a driver's license, adding everybody who renews a driver's license, adding somebody who goes to jail, they're automatically put in the roles. I mean, it's crazy. You touch any government agency, you're automatically put in the roles. So that churn is going on. So notice, this is a nice way to just show that that the voter rolls are not under local control. You need to take back local control of your elections, starting with your voter rolls. So last week I was showing all the different analyses we do of voter rolls in more detail. I just summarized them quickly. Now I'm showing you what the fix is and what you need to do about it. And basically you need to take back local control, and I'm going to show you how. Okay, so should we be trying to clean our voter rolls? No. You shouldn't be trying to clean your voter rolls, because the problem isn't that the voter rolls are dirty. The problem is that you're not in control of the voter rolls. So if you spend all your time cleaning the voter rolls, it's like cleaning your kid's room. It just gets dirty again. Karen Taylor's here, so I got to give a Pennsylvania example. I was up in Mercer County recently, and the person who picked me up from the airport was very nice and drove me, and he was all excited. Dr. Frank, we removed 600 people from the voter rolls. Woo-hoo, woo-hoo. And he sat with the clerk for days, and they cleaned it up. And I said, well, how's that working? Well, I don't know. I just assumed it was good. Well, we downloaded the rolls, and guess what? They're all dirty again. No, you're wasting your time cleaning the voter rolls unless you have local control of the voter rolls. So I always encourage people, download a copy of your rolls and clean your own copy and use your own copy, and that's what we're doing. And then what are we looking for when we're doing all this work? We're not auditing the ballots of the machines. We're auditing the voters. That's where I take people. Now, the reason that's the second big deal. So the first thing is we need to take back local control of our elections. The second thing is how to do that. Fat chance getting access to the machines. Very rarely across the country have we had access to the machines. The judges don't usually support it. It's tricky. So point I'm making is we can audit the voter rolls, however. So now we're diving in. I think I've set the context. What's our goal? Get local control. How do we do it? Through the voter rolls. Why? Because with the voter rolls, we can prove that there's fraud in your election. And just to quickly summarize this argument, if there's fraud in your election, every case of fraud is nullifying a real ballot from a real voter, nullifying their vote, which is a violation of their constitutional rights. Their constitutional right to have their vote count. I was talking to somebody the other day. They said if it's not nullifying a vote, at the minimum, it's diluting everybody else's vote. Well, if it's diluting everybody else's vote, it's not one man, one vote anymore. So there you go. It's violating your constitutional right to have your vote count. So that's a civil rights violation. That's important. Once you realize that's a civil rights violation, you don't have to comply with any law or policy that violates your civil rights. That's the key point here. So that's how do we get there? I'm going to take you there. So what you're going to do is you're going to follow the 7 steps. This is what you're going to do. And I put together a little trifold, and this is a little bit of a repeat now because I've been summarizing that. But basically, we the people are the sovereigns. We're supposed to be in control. We've forgotten this. As Benjamin Franklin said, only virtuous people are capable of freedom. We've given us a republic. If we can keep it, well, we've lost it, and elections are now centrally controlled by the state, and people don't trust our elections anymore. So, step 1 of the 7 steps. How do we get our elections back? How do we restore trust in our elections? Step 1, you get connected. Why is this important? It was fun listening to Karen introduce me at the beginning. She's right. We were there 5 years ago together. There were 3 ladies that started out as the Vote PA. Have we learned a lot in the last 5 years, Karen Taylor? Yes, we have. We have learned a lot. So if a lot of people are getting involved, and they're like way behind. There's a lot of lessons to learn. So step 1, get connected. And on the back of the trifold, by the way, if you want a copy of the trifold, just send us an email. We'll get it to you. Causeofamerica.org. Sign up. And get on the list. If you got an email to even come on here, so that's getting you signed up. Or you can follow me. You can send me an email. My email there is drdouglasgfrank@outlook.com, and I'll send that stuff. And what we've been doing is we've been helping people build these 7-step teams. So step 1 is get connected, because then we can come help you and coach you. And I don't charge anything for the work I do. Karen doesn't charge anything, and none of us are charging. So we're not selling you a product. We're offering to help you. That's a big deal. And one of the things I've done is I've prepared a nice little outline. If you contact us, we'll send us, this is how to get Dr. Frank to come to your town. This is how to launch a 7-steps team. It'll give you all the starting points. So that's why step 1 is get connected. Collect the wisdom that we've gathered. Step 2, get organized. This is where most teams fail, right off the bat. I'm just going to read this little bit. It says, start by assembling a small, I remember in the early days we thought, let's get lots of people involved. You bring lots of people in, all you get is drama. No, we want a small local team of selfless, like-minded patriots who believe strongly in the team objectives. You need at least 7 core people. Team leader, data person, promoter, recruiter, researcher, strategist, and archivist. And I'll come back and describe what each of those people are here in a minute. Meet together in person to strategize and begin developing a local plan. This is where most people fail. I love Karen. She's awesome. Karen and Tony. They're high energy ladies. They're engaged. It's like we're going to war. And it's like they picked up their guns and they ran at the enemy. Well, how did that work out? Okay, not a very good strategy. You don't send your best snipers out into the war field. No, you need intel, strategy, infrastructure. You need, the general doesn't fight in the war. The general stays behind the lines and plans and strategizes and directs, and that's a leader. So it's like you need multiple things to be happening, not just one thing. And we kind of had to learn that. So that's what the step 2 is. In fact, if I was rewriting this thing today, I think I would call that form your war council, because you need a small war council. And the general doesn't have 50 people in his office with him. It's a small group, core group. So step 1, get connected. Step 2, form your war council, because we are at war. It's 5th generation war, and our ammunition is the Constitution, and that's where we're going, okay? And it's a serious war. I was with General Flynn recently, and he says he didn't know of a more serious way to express the situation we're in. It's a very bad situation. He says the situation is grave, and he had just described a horrible war scene, and he said our country is even in a worse situation than that. He's very concerned. He has a movie out if you haven't seen it, flynnmovie.com. It's awesome, and Nellie gives it the thumbs up. So if you want to see it, it's a good movie. It'll wake you up. So anyway, what are the 7 people on the war council? The team leader. A team leader organizes the effort and manages meetings. I see it all the time. You take some dynamic person that's out there working really hard and they want to be the leader. Wrong. You don't want the leader to be the person that's doing all the work. The leader needs to be leading. The leader needs to stand back from the work and make sure everybody else is doing their job. And imagine what it would be like if the general picked up his gun and ran at the enemy. Wrong. You need him back in the bunker doing the planning. So the leader is the leader. The data person, somebody that's able to work with the data we give them, because I give people data. I just finished all the data for the state of Colorado, where I can help them find fraud with their own voter roll data. So you need somebody that's good at data. Then you need a promoter, and I'm going to explain that a little more later, but you don't win with the data. Everybody gets all excited. Oh, Dr. Frank, we need the data. That's how we win. Wrong. It's like saying we're going to win the war with ammunition. Okay, you need ammunition. I'm not saying you don't need ammunition, but you don't win with the ammunition. So you got to have a promoter, somebody who is scheduling and promoting events, because you're going to win with a movement, and ultimately, and I'll come back to that. And then you need a recruiter. people that are going to bring in the troops. I didn't say bring in the troops to the war council. I said bring in the troops in our movement, in our effort. And then a researcher, people that explore laws, contracts, records of, and what officials you have. So, for example, I just came back from Colorado, and the team there, led by Jim Elliott, it was awesome. The team got together, they researched the state, and they said, these are the counties we think we want Dr. Frank to go to. And they sent me to those counties. It was a home run. Now, in the past, I just was going where I was invited. But in the last year, I've been picking and choosing. I've been saying, where should I be going? Let's get organized. It's sort of like, I'm not going to be attacking Berlin on the first day. I want to get to Normandy. So I had to choose. Is it Normandy Beach? Is it Omaha Beach? Where am I going? So we need to choose. So you need to research. You need research going on in your team as well. And you need a strategist, somebody who likes playing chess. If we do this, what are they going to do? If we try this or that, or explore contingencies. And I was in the Art of War. Sun Tzu says at the end of the war, when you win, it's because of one piece of intel and one piece of strategy to go with that intel. So that's really important. You need research to get intel, and you need the strategist to implement it, and then archivists to organize it. So I encourage all of you who want to get involved in election integrity, ask yourself, what are your gifts? What gifts has God given you? Are you a leader? Are you a data person? Are you a promoter, recruiter? It seems like people usually can know their own heart, who they are, what they're good at. So then get together with those other patriots and establish a beachhead in your own community. So that was step 2 of the 7 steps. Step 3, you're going to formulate a local plan. Every local situation has nuances that are unique to that area, that make it special. You don't fight the war the same in every town. Every town's got its own little twist, its own little situation. And one of them, we always look for counties where we've got a good sheriff. Sheriffs are great because sheriffs are the constitutional officer for a county. That's a big deal. And then when I just came from Colorado, I met with a sheriff in almost every one of the counties I was just in. And when the sheriffs find out what's going on, they are on board. And what I've learned is once we get connected to the sheriffs and they understand what we're doing, that's a very powerful aspect of our movement around the country. Now, when I was there in Colorado, the newspapers were writing me up. Here I am, election denier, Peter's ally to speak in Delta County. It was pretty good. That's how you know I'm the real deal, when the newspapers always write hit pieces on me. That's pretty fun. I like that. But while I was there, also in the newspaper, I noticed that I'm talking about step 3 with the nuances and the strategy, the local strategy. There are already a group of counties, about half of them in Colorado, that are beginning to say to the government, we're not going to comply with your unfunded mandates anymore. And this is based out of Mesa County, by the way, which is one of the counties I was in. And so think about it. Elections are an unfunded mandate because the state says to you, you must buy these machines. You must pay these service contracts. You must hire these people to run all this equipment, and we're not paying. You're paying. And that's an interesting situation. I was in a small county called Rio Grande County. If I was there, I'd say Rio Grande. But anyway, they call it Rio Grande. And I was down there, and the commissioner stood up, and he says, Dr. Frank, the state is forcing us, our tiny little county, to pay $80,000 to Dominion to renew our contract. We don't have did I say million? $80,000. We don't have $80,000. We don't want to do this. We want to run our own elections. It's only 5,000 people. Come on, we don't need all this fancy stuff. Exactly. So that's the point. That's a nuance we can take advantage of. So that's why I said in step 3, you use local nuances because you're building a movement. And you're formulating a plan that fits that situation. Step 4, you implement that plan, and that takes work. Typically, once you've got your team formed, you're a couple of months away until you're really doing step 4 efficiently. Then the goal of all this work is to build a movement. And this is a different idea for a lot of people. A lot of people think, gee, Dr. Frank, all we got to do is have a lawsuit. That'll fix it. Or, gee, Dr. Frank, all we got to do is write a new legislative bill. While I was in Colorado, I sat down with one of the senators, and she said she's been writing bills every year. None of them even make it out of committee. If you think you're going to fix it with the legislature, you're wrong. You think you're going to fix it in the courts, you're wrong. The fix is local. Local action, baby. So let me just read what this says. Success in this effort begins with unassailable evidence of local fraud obtained by your team. That evidence allows you to build a credible local movement. You won't win this battle with mere evidence. You need your citizens to engage the movement. You're not going to relinquish control of your effort to any court or any official. This is your investigation. You are fulfilling your government role as our Constitution intended. You're building a movement. That's how you're going to win. Speaking of movements, our lovely president, a couple months ago, wrote a long email, a long Twitter. It's probably the longest thing I've ever seen him write. I mean, the guy wrote an essay. Usually he's got a short tweet. And I'm not going to read his whole tweet to you, but it starts out, I'm going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots. Now, see, I just came from a state that's all mail-in ballots, Colorado. And I'm about to be in another state tomorrow. I leave tomorrow morning early for Oregon. All mail-in ballots. So guess what? Trump has just announced he's going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots. That's a nuance that affects that area. So the strategy we use will involve that. Reading on. And also, while we're at it, highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines, which cost 10 times more than accurate and sophisticated watermark paper, which is faster and leaves no doubt at the end of the evening as to who won and who lost, blah, 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 blah. Go read his tweet if you want to read it. The thing that matters to me is he said, I am going to lead a movement. That is the key idea. He knows the way to win this is not with evidence. The way to win this is with a movement. We have to get organized. We have to form that movement. That's the solution. That's what I'm here teaching you guys. So you're going to be building that movement, step 5. And then step 6 is the 7 steps is you're going to review progress. Now, how are you going to review your progress unless you have it put down somewhere so we can review it together? And that's the binder strategy, and that's the main focus of today. But I needed you to understand what you're going to be putting in the binder, and that's what we're talking about. So let's talk about it. You're going to be building.
Dr. Frey, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Anytime there, gal.
Okay, I want to talk about this for a minute before you get into the evidence binder, because I want people to understand. All 7 steps go together, right? So if you don't have 1 through 6 and you only do number 7, it's not going to work, correct?
That's right. And if you only have 6 out of 7 of the people on your war council, it ain't going to work. It's like you can't win your war without ammunition. You can't win your war without generals. You can't win your war without intel. You can't win your war without strategy. You got to have each of those key elements.
And people need to understand it's not an overnight thing, right? It is going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of planning.
Yeah, it took us about 3 years to take over Shasta County in Northern California, but a lot of the wisdom that's encapsulated in the 7 steps is we learned there. I learned a lot of the wisdom I learned in Pennsylvania, a lot of around the country. They call me the Johnny Appleseed of election integrity, but I'm really not planting seeds as much as I'm cross-pollinating. I'm gathering all the evidence and sharing it. So these days, it's going much faster. So let's say that in Colorado, I just came back from there last week. Man, can you tell I'm supercharged about Colorado? They are on fire down there. Now, I've got their data ready for them, but I can't just give them their data. There's training that goes with that. And I don't think they're going to be into step 3 very seriously, probably for 2 months. I think that's how long it's going to take. And then I don't think they're going to be at step 5 till probably 4 or 6 months from now. And so we've set our goal to have local, and this might be unrealistic because it's a new territory, but let's find out. We've set as an initial goal that we want to take back local control of their elections by their primary next June. So I don't know how far we'll get, but if you don't set a goal, then you don't make progress. So we've set a goal, and we're going to do our best to get there. It might not be till the general, but we'd like to take it by the primary. How about that? Should I continue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for butting in. I like it. It makes me not feel so alone over here. I gave a talk one time, and it was like 30 minutes into it before I realized it wasn't online anymore. I was talking to myself on the computer. So I like it that you're butting in everyone, so feel free. I'm going to have you make 3 binders. evidence binder, research binder, and supplementary materials. And I don't mean an online Google Drive, shared drive. I mean a physical binder. You need this to be on paper. Lots of reasons. So let's talk about the evidence binder first. In the evidence binder, there's an introduction at the beginning with arguments and rebuttals and whatnot. And there's a reason, by the way, let me go back to the 3. There's a reason that we're doing binders. And I'll cover that a little more, but there's a psychological aspect to this. So I just left Colorado, and I've got a bunch of counties there that are going to stand together, just like they're standing together right now against the government to say, we're not going to agree with unfunded mandates anymore. They're now going to stand together and say, guess what? Holding up their evidence binder. We all have the same problem with our elections. You know, this isn't a Mesa County problem. This isn't a Rio Grande problem. This isn't a Saguache problem. This is a Colorado problem. If every county acts independently and every county has its own kind of evidence, it sounds like it's not the same problem. The core argument we're making here is multiple counties are going to say at the same time and say to the state, we're not going to comply with your stupid system anymore. We're not going to comply because it's compromising our constitutional rights. And it's the same problem everywhere. The problem is the state system. That's why we want it to look the same. So that's why we're making binders. And can you imagine standing in front of the camera or standing in front of your commissioners, county after county, holding up the same binder? Here's our evidence. Here's our evidence. Same everywhere. Okay, so the evidence binder's got introduction, argument, and rebuttals. And the reason is because everybody's got to have the same arguments. We're trying to sound and look the same. Plus, there's a lot of new people in this, and they don't know what to argue yet because they're new at it. And so it's sort of a primer at the same time, and you've got your binder right there, so whenever you have to talk to the press or wherever you have to talk to the commissioners, you got your primer right there. Okay, and in that binder, there's going to be 10 fraudulent voting cases, 10 cases of fraud, 10 cases where the voting was illegal, 10 cases where there's egregious voter rolls. We can talk about that some more. And then 5 examples where there's been illegal practices. So think about it. We're making an argument. We're saying, gee, the state isn't following its own laws. The state isn't following federal law. Our voter rolls are a total wreck. No wonder we have illegal and fraudulent voting. So guess what? We're not going to comply because we don't have to comply because the state's out of compliance. So that's the evidence binder. More on that later. The research binder also has 4 tabs. First tab is all laws and policies. First job of the researcher, remember I mentioned the 7 people, is to download the laws for your own state and your own county. Huntington Beach in Southern California read their own charter and discovered it says right in their charter they can run their own elections. They don't have to use the state system. That's a big deal. So read your own laws. Are we the government or not? We better read the laws, okay? So that's important. Your own county budget. People are shocked when they find out what they're really spending on elections. If you could spread that news around town, how much you're really spending on elections, you want to start a movement against central control? There's a beautiful piece of ammunition for you. The second tab has the various election systems. So if you're Dominion or you're an ES&S or Clear Ballot or whatever it is, you need to know where your service contracts are, when they're up for renewal, because we're going to be doing strategy around that. So you need to do, that's the research binder. You need to research, what government officials you have. I mentioned that earlier. Where do you have good clerks? Where do you have good sheriffs? Where do you have good county officials and things like that? And if there are any relevant lawsuits, you want to be doing research on that. So that's the research binder. So I did the evidence binder, the research binder, and then the supplementary materials. And you can put anything you want in here. So these are just some suggestions. You just want to keep the other 2 binders clean. Strategy, contact information, list of volunteers, blah, blah, blah. Anything else you think might be relevant. Okay, let's dive into the evidence binder. I'm aiming, Karen, to be done in about 10 minutes. So since I said that, it'll probably be 15. But then we can do some questions. But I'm trying to get her done. Okay, so I'm diving in here. By the way, you notice that I animated this binder. And the reason is because I wanted to make it feel like it really exists. And the reason is I was in Oregon last year, about a year ago now. And one of the counties, Polk County actually, they brought their binder in and showed it to everybody. And everybody goes, well, gee, how come? And like, where's your binders? And they thought, well, we didn't realize when you said you wanted a binder that you really wanted a binder. Yeah, I want you to have a binder. I have a binder that opens up and has 4 tabs in it, just like this. Okay, and so the content, like I said, 10 cases of fraud, 10 cases of illegal voting, 10 cases of egregious voter rolls, and 5 examples. So 10, 10, 10, and 5. That's what we're after. Let's read this together. Assembling this evidence binder is a key component in the 7 steps team effort to take back local control of your elections. The evidence binder comprises and organizes the argument which justifies your local community's refusal to comply. See it back there? We will not comply. By the way, I learned that from Chris Ann Hall. She's got this great movie called Non-Compliant. She's awesome. I love her. All right, so you're not going to comply because if the law is unjust, a man has not only a right to disobey it, he's obligated to do so, like Jefferson said. So here we go. The laws and policies surrounding our elections are unjust. So you are obligated as a citizen to step up. So that's what this is all about. And then, like I mentioned, there are 7 people on the team. It's the archivist's job to keep and maintain the binder. And I mean a physical binder. It is so fun when I walk into a county these days. I've been doing this long enough now that when I walk in, and there'll be some lady walk in, and she's got a little gleam in her eye, and she puts 3 huge binders on the table, and I'm like, yes, I'm in the right place. This is awesome. So, and that's the archivist. You want your archivist to be kind of OCD. They're kind of obsessive about getting everything organized into the binder. And I always make a joke about it. In World War II, there was always in those old black and white movies, there was always a scene where there was like a private running through a room full of typewriters, a bunch of people typing at the typewriters. What were they doing? They were collecting intel and organizing it so that the leaders could get to it. Guess what? That's what the binders are. So the evidence collected here should pertain to your own community, county, or state. I don't want you talking about something in New York if you live in California. Your own local stuff. In fact, the more county-ish it is, the better. Your local situation. You want a physical hard copy, and you always keep that copy. You never give it to anybody else. It's just yours. And you can make copies of it if you want, but that's probably for later, after it's already become public. Until then, it should probably just be one copy kept by your archivist. And the evidence belongs to the local team. No individual may use it without permission of the team. This is a very important point. I don't want to use names, but I've had teams blow up because somebody gets all excited and they want to be the hero, and they grab the binder and they run out in public and they get the cover of the newspaper, they get the cover of Epic Times, they get their 15 minutes of fame, and they shoot the whole movement in the foot. No, nobody gets to use it independently. The team owns that binder. You act together. It's like you don't have a private get all mad at Hitler and run and attack Berlin all by himself. That's not how we win. You got to have a movement. Okay, that's an important point. The evidence in the binder should not be seen by the public until it's undergone thorough investigation, error checking, and peer review. That's a big deal. I can tell you story after story where people get all excited. Oh, we found fraud, Dr. Frank, and they tell the newspaper, and it ain't fraud. Bad idea. Nothing goes public until it's been peer reviewed. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have press releases. You can talk all about it, but the timing matters, and what you say matters. So general references are good. You know, like you could say our team is investigated and we're finding all kinds of fraud and dead voters and illegal voters, and we'll release those when the time is right. But you don't release it to the public till it's ready. And like, for example, in Colorado and in Oregon and in Alabama and Wisconsin, in these states, we're going to release data in a strategic way. When it makes sense to release, we will. But we're in a war, so let's act like it. The process, and this is super important, one of the reasons why I really want you to have it on paper is because the process of preparing the hard copy version forces you to carefully scrutinize and organize each case. There's something about putting it on paper. Is the guy dead? Okay, do we have a death certificate? Oh, we don't. Somebody get a death certificate. You know, it kind of organizes and forces you to do that. And remember, our evidence that we're going to be gathering must be unassailable. You're going to be showing it to the public. It can't be weak. It has to be strong. Every one of your cases. That's one of the reasons why I'm saying just use 10. You want 10 airtight cases. Now, I just came from a county in Oregon, I'm going to be there again soon, where they've got 50 cases, easy. But so just pick your 10 best ones and make them really firm. Keep the collections here. Now, the evidence binder, I want to be a thin binder, 1 inch on the binding. You don't want too much. So I'll give an example because Karen's on the call of Audit the Vote. They did tons of canvassing. And also in Colorado, they did tons of canvassing. In Arizona, they did tons of canvassing. And they made these massive reports, and they turned them in. And one of the lessons from that is when you give the public too much evidence, They don't understand, and they don't even look at it. This is going to be a thin, clean, keep it simple, stupid binder. Open and shut cases one after another. Your first priority is going to be to find fraud. Especially at the start of your work, focus on finding fraud. Illegal and roles categories are easier, and they'll fill automatically. You'll be able to fill up the binder easily with those. Look for fraud, and you'll find tons of other stuff. Once it's ready, you're going to be taking that binder with you whenever you're addressing elected officials because you've got your evidence right there. Oh, I lost my internet connection. No. You got the evidence right here. Boom, you open the binder. Anytime you have to debate in public, you got your tool right there. It's like your weapon ready to go. So the essential argument is our elections are now centrally controlled by the state rather than the local level, where transparency, auditability, and accountability can be maintained. Incompetence, poor system design, corruption, intimidation, and lack of security are rampant, making our election platforms among the least secure in the world. Bad players have seized upon this opportunity to manipulate the outcomes of our elections by several means, especially using the voter rolls and networked election equipment. You notice that we've got the argument right here. Everybody's going to have the same argument. The core solution is for citizens to take back local control of our elections and to run them manually and locally like we did for 200 years. State officials and legislatures will oppose the trend because governments always seek to centralize control, and our legislatures are corrupt. They no longer represent the interests of the citizens. They've been elected. Now, I think you got the idea what the core argument is. Let me move ahead to the first tab, the fraud tab. Fraudulent voting. Dead voters. Obviously, if somebody votes and they're dead, then they have really good longhand if they sign that ballot. There are a lot of dead voters in our rolls these days, guys, and I don't mean just a person who's dead who's in the rolls. I mean they're dead and somebody cast a ballot for them. That's a dead voter. That's clearly a case of fraud. A ghost voter. I first learned that term from Vico Bertoli, who's on this call. Thank you, Vico. And basically, or we call them phantom voters. They were people who, it wasn't really them. Somebody was casting a ballot using somebody else's name. So that would be that. A low propensity voter, which is really a ghost voter, but we call them low propensity voters because you'll look through the rolls and you'll find somebody who never votes, but they voted one time in one election by mail. You knock on their door and they say, no, I never vote. That's not me. Okay, well, it's a low propensity voter. It's easy to find those. And then non-resident voters, people who don't live there anymore. They moved to another state, but they're gone, and somebody is casting a vote for them, even though they're not there anymore. Sometimes we have people voting in more than one state, too. And so we can catch those. And Vico, I know you've been working on that lately. We're working up a little system for checking into those. And then super voter, somebody votes more than once. And so these, now what you're going to have is you're only going to have 10 examples of fraudulent voting. Only 10. You're going to be able to find more, but we just want you to put 10 in the binder. And we want them to be your juicy ones, your juiciest cases you've got. They're not leads. They're fully documented. They don't get to go in this binder until they're done. They can be in your supplementary binder where you collect the evidence or whatnot. And you're going to fully document every one. So here I've opened up the first tab for the first fraudulent case. Each case has a little summary page. For example, a fraudulent ballot was cast in the 2024 general election for John Smith, 123 Apple Tree Lane, Jonesville, Ohio. John Smith has been deceased since 2016. You could show all the supporting documentation. You show a death certificate. You show the voter rolls. In other words, that's completely contained in that tab. So you quickly turn a tab, clean case, one after another. Now let's talk about illegal voting. So notice that in fraudulent voting, it's when it isn't them voting. Somebody else used their name. That would be fraudulent voting, although there is one example of fraud where you yourself voted in more than one state. That is also fraud. But in general, most of the fraud we find is when somebody else's name is being used. Now, illegal voting is when somebody votes who's not qualified to vote, like a non-citizen. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot of those in our rolls. It isn't just our friends south of the border. I was up in Maine recently, and we have a ton of Canadians who are Canadian citizens who are in the voter rolls and are getting mailed ballots, and they're voting. Okay, so it's not just, everybody thinks of the illegal aliens from down south. It's also non-citizens from around the world, from other countries. So non-citizens, non-residents. And this is why you need to do research, because what you're going to find is that a lot of states have specific residency requirements in order to be allowed to vote. Or if a person is a felon or underage, or they're disqualified if they're mentally incapacitated or something like that. And you're going to do the same thing in this category. I'm going to cut to the chase here. You do the same thing in this category. You're going to have 10 tabs for that, just like you had 10 tabs for the illegal voting. You have a case summary for each one, just like before. Now let's do egregious voter rolls. There's a beautiful example of egregious voter rolls, especially in a state like Colorado. If they mail a ballot to everybody in their voter rolls, and people haven't lived there for 20 years, and they're still getting mailed a ballot to that house. Okay, that's an example. In Oregon, there was one of my teams there found about 15 kids that were registered to vote from their dorm room in 2006, and they're still getting mailed ballots. Ballots are being mailed to that dorm room. Just think of all the waste. In Colorado, I learned that the counties are paying about $10 a ballot for every ballot they're mailing out, too. And when you think about that, think of how much money. It's like in one county I was in, it's like $300,000 they would save, Mesa County. They would save like $300,000 just by not mailing a ballot to all the people who don't belong in their rolls. Their rolls are so egregious. So anyway, that's egregious voter rolls, and you get examples of that just like you did in the other. So why are we doing the binder? We're doing the binder because we're organizing each of these categories, because the argument is what justifies your non-compliance. Okay, and then the final category is the legal category, and that's why you need to research your state laws. For example, if you're using machines that can connect to the internet, that's illegal according to federal law, and almost all the brands do, so that's something. Or let's say that your county officials aren't following their own state law, so you're going to catalog all this. So let's review. You've got a state that's not complying with its own laws, not complying with federal laws. Its voter rolls are filthy dirty, egregious voter rolls. No wonder you have illegal and fraudulent voting. I guess we don't have to comply anymore. And in some states, like in Colorado, where I just was, or in Oregon, they're being sued by the Department of Justice because they are out of compliance. So if the state's being sued for being out of compliance with own elections, why should a county comply? They don't have to. But we've learned, if one county stands by itself, that's like having one soldier pop his head up out of the trenches. You know what happens when one soldier pops his head up out of the trenches? That's where all the guns are aimed. So we've learned, no, we want multiple counties at the same time, standing up at the same time, and then holding up the same binder, because it's the same problem. It's not unique problems. It's the same problem statewide. And then if we've done our job right and we've done our strategy well, we'll have the sheriff on board who can interpose on behalf of us, because the sheriff is the one that defends our constitutional rights. But we never ask our county leaders to stand up. We never ask our sheriff to stand up. We never ask our clerks to stand up. We, the people, always stand up, because we are the movement. And when we are leading the movement, then the politicians join us, because politicians don't start parades, they join them. So we have to start the movement, and we win with the movement. Remember, we're the sovereigns. We don't ask for permission. They work for us. Once we've proven that there's fraud in our elections and our own constitutional rights are being violated, we don't ask permission. We go to our leaders and say, we're not going to comply with this anymore. But the problem is we're upside down. You know, what do? When Antifa comes to town, we all want to call the sheriff. That's wrong. You're supposed to grab your rifle and call your neighbors, and you're supposed to meet Antifa in the street. We have been conditioned into thinking when there's a problem, we go to the government. Wrong. This was, by the way, this picture is from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. When Antifa showed up, they lined the streets. The sheriff actually called back his deputies. We don't look to the government to fix our problems. You know why? We're the government. We're supposed to be defending ourselves. We've just forgotten. We've been conditioned into thinking that somebody else is going to fix it. Remember, America is an experiment in self-government. You are the government. Start acting like it. If the government was to come along and say, oh, you know, we're going to collect all your guns, or what do you say? You say, come and take them. You automatically understand that if the government wants to take your guns, you say, no way. In fact, it's not our right to keep and bear arms. It's our obligation to maintain a well-regulated militia, to defend ourselves against what? a tyrannical government. The Second Amendment is about us protecting ourselves from the government. So when they say, give us your guns, we say, pound sand. But when they say, give us your ballots, we give them up without a fight. What's wrong with us? That's how we defend ourselves. That's our First Amendment weapon. Our Second Amendment weapons are our guns, but our First Amendment weapons are our election vote. We should not be giving them to the government. We need to stop that. Stop it now. Okay. It's your constitutional duty to defend your constitutional voice. Fortunately, as John Adams says, it doesn't take a majority of us to prevail. Rather, an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of, I said John Adams, Sam Adams, brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. And that's what we are doing. We are organizing that movement. That is the fix. I showed you what was wrong with the rolls. I just described what the fix. If you want to get involved, get in contact with us. Form your beachhead in your community. And I always joke about it. If you'll build your team, I'll come. Okay? We're going to be voting Amish, all paper, no machines, all local control. Only 5 minutes behind. Pretty good.
Oh, no worries. Hey, John Adams said some really good quotes too, right? Duty is ours, results are God's. So, you know,
There you
Sam,
go.
John, it's okay. We got a couple questions, Dr. Frank. Start with John in Columbia County, Oregon. He asked if we have the Columbia County information to sort for legal voters or voters. And then he said, have we heard anything about a census prior to 2026 general? He saw something about WinRed fundraising on that and was curious if anything's going to be done.
Boy, there's a lot in that question. Yes, I've run the whole state. I've analyzed every county, and I have spreadsheets that I can give local people to help them find fraud. But he didn't quite say it that way. He said, is there a spreadsheet to find illegals? That's a different question. And that requires a little nuance, which is, I don't want to get into it now, it's a little too long. I've covered it in some of my other talks. But yes, we can do that. I was just talking with Michelle before this call. I was talking to her on the phone. It's not as simple as me just giving you your data. You need training to go with that. And so what I do and what I am doing right now is as I'm distributing data to these counties, we're holding training sessions together to teach you what to do, how to avoid legal pitfalls, and how to find the evidence we're looking for. Now, the Team Red thing, I'm not familiar with that, so I don't know what to say, but I haven't heard from them, and I don't think they're following the 7 steps, so how about that for an answer? You know, I know in Oregon they're doing this End Vote by Mail effort, and I'm not opposed to that. They're doing a statewide initiative, Karen, where they're going around getting citizens to sign it, to get it on the ballot, and it isn't just ending vote by mail, it's got a list of other things too. But I just like asking people, okay, after you get the initiative signed and you get it on the ballot, then there's going to be an election. Okay? So just think about that for a minute. You're going to try to fix broken elections with a broken election, okay? I'm not sure that's the logical strategy. Now, I'm not opposed to the end vote by mail thing, as long as you keep in mind what the purpose of it is. It's sort of like I don't oppose lawsuits as long as you don't count on them for the remedy. I'm not counting on this end vote by mail effort for the remedy because I don't think you're going to get the remedy. But I like it if it's educating the public, just like lawsuits educate the public. And we have some lawsuits going right now in Oregon, 2 of them. The Department of Justice is suing them, Judicial Watch is suing them, and there's a case in Douglas County too. So there are good lawsuits happening. Am I counting on those lawsuits for the remedy? No. But already in those cases, it's now been proven in court that their voter rolls are illegal. Oh, that's useful. Okay, so the remedy of the court isn't necessarily what I care about. What I care is it's been proven in court that their voter rolls are illegal. Guess what then? None of the counties have to use them. Bum-ba-da-dum. Guess what? We take them back local. See where I'm going? So, in other words, we can use these various aspects in our strategy, but I'm not counting on them for the result. That was a long answer, but I think I handled multiple aspects of his question.
Absolutely. And awareness is so important, right? I mean, look at where we were almost 5 years ago and how many people have become aware of what's going on since then.
Yes.
And new
Yes.
people learn every day. And that's how we start this movement, right?
Way to go, Karen. I was on that call, I referenced it earlier, with Chris Ann Hall. It was hosted by a team in Alabama. And she said something very powerful during that interview. She said that if you study the history of revolutions throughout history, whenever you got to 3% of the public aware and engaged, you could have a nonviolent revolution. So all we need are 3% of the people aware and engaged. So there we go. Notice we win with the movement.
Right. Our next question comes from Jeremy in Philadelphia, actually. And Jeremy said if the cheating occurs in the big counties, about 25 or so around the country, how will focusing on the small counties help us secure our elections in time?
What a great question. I'm down there in the San Luis Valley with those small little tiny counties, and everybody says, what are you wasting your time here for? Denver's where the problem is. Or when I'm in northern Wisconsin, where Stephanie and Scott are up there, awesome folks, we started what we call the North of 29 movement because there was a retired veteran there who said, war veteran, he says, what are you doing up here, Dr. Frank? Nobody cares about us up here north of 29. And I understand. There's like only 100,000 people up there, and the fraud alone in Milwaukee is 120,000 in 2020. I mean, it's like, why are we bothering? Here's why. When multiple counties stand up together and draw a line in the sand and say to the state, we're not using your system, that creates a crisis. Now, I'm not expecting the states to go, oh, good one, good job, you guys, okay, you win. No, the state's going to go, you have to use our system. And then those counties are going to say, no, we don't, because here's the evidence, binder, 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 binder. Here's the evidence that proves that your system is disenfranchising us from our constitutional rights, and we don't have to comply with any law or policy which disenfranchises us from our constitutional rights. So no, we refuse. So I'm expecting a war, which is another reason why we don't just have one tiny county standing up against the state. We organize them together. And then the sheriffs can interpose and defend, which is why we develop a relationship with the sheriffs as well. And why the county commissioners are the ones deciding, because like in Colorado, they're not going to comply with unfunded mandates. In other words, you have a choice. You can either just roll over and give up your state, let the tyrants take it, or you can make a stand. And someone might say, well, why did you attack in Normandy? The problem's in Berlin where Hitler is. The answer is because you take the beachheads you can. And in war, you keep moving forward and you advance. Right now, there are a bunch of non-organized individual movements going on, individual actions taking place that are just getting shot down one at a time. No, we're going to organize a movement and act together. So his point's well taken in the sense that, okay, the state offices might be out of your reach. But guess what? You just won your school board elections. You just won your sheriff elections. You just took back your county commissioner elections. And I mean, think about 2020. That was an eye-opening year for so many of us. I think we all learned that maybe the most powerful, most important office, elected office in this country isn't the president. It's the school board. Okay? And to take back local control of the elections, to put good school board people in, I mean, think about it. That's educating the next generation of children. How do you take over a country? You know, Stalin said, give me one generation of your children and I'll take over your country. Well, that's where it is. So points well taken on the numbers, but what I'm really expecting to happen is as follows. Counties are going to be able to start standing against the state. Let's take Colorado, since I just came there. Multiple counties stand against the state, say we're not going to comply because they're unfunded mandates and they're disenfranchising us from our constitutional rights. And furthermore, Trump just said he's leading a movement against mail ballots. Oh, well, that's what we have here. In other words, it isn't just your own local fight that you're really engaging. Because then when Colorado, a bunch of counties in Colorado stand up, and a bunch of counties in Oregon stand up, and then other counties around the country stand up, and the federal government comes in. See what's happening? It's not about just your own county or just one election. It's about we the people taking back local control of our elections and fulfilling our constitutional obligation and taking back our government, starting to be the government again. So,
Right, but you got to start somewhere, right?
yeah, and you're not going to start day one in Berlin. You got to take
Right.
Normandy, and you can't take Normandy until you get your ships together and get your ammunition ready and your troops trained. So this is a war. If you think of it in war terms, you realize it's a long haul, and this is how we're going to win. If you think of it, oh, there's a silver bullet, there's lawsuit, or there's this. Everybody wants the simple fix. There isn't one.
Right. Right. We actually have a really good question from Suzanne in Alabama.
She's awesome.
She is. She's amazing.
She's a data person, man. She has done so much work in Alabama. What do you got for me, Suzanne?
So she asks, how do you determine that someone is a non-citizen? Our Secretary of State tells us we have thousands on the rolls, but
Yeah.
how do you begin to identify the registration records?
All right, this is sort of like goes back to the first question, doesn't it? That's so twice in a row somebody's talked about this. All right, so I might as well answer it. This is what I encourage people to do. I was just in Colorado, where there are a lot of people of brown skin, and I was sitting with the guy at a table who's Mexican, and I said, I bet you know which communities, which neighborhoods have all the illegals hanging out in them. I bet you know. He goes, oh, yeah. He says, I know. And I said, so let's get a copy of the rolls, and let's look at them, because I also have the voter history. And let's see if there's a lot of voting happening in one of those neighborhoods where all those non-citizens are hanging out. Okay? And let's say we find Enrique and Maria and Jose and Pablo and all these guys that are voting. So then we send one, not me, because I look like a gringo. We send in, one of these Mexican-looking people into a Mexican-looking neighborhood, and they say, hey, Pablo, it says here you voted in the last election. And Pablo said, no, senor, no, I did not vote. Well, it says here you did, and that's a felony, and you can never be a citizen of the United States because of it. And he's like, no, senor, I did not vote. And so what happens then, if you can find a bunch of these people who didn't vote, and let's have them sign affidavits, and you get those, now you can go to your local DA, and you now have probable cause that fraud has taken place. And the DA can go to a judge, and the judge can give access across HIPAA and look at the Medicare, Medicaid, which lists whether people are citizens or not. So one way to find out who's not a citizen is the legal route, like I just suggested. Another route is to bring that to your sheriff, and your sheriff has access to those kind of roles too. If once you give sheriff probable cause, he can do an investigation. So that's another way. I would like to just doge the whole country all at once with the Social Security records is what I'd like to do. But there are all these impediments to that. So Suzanne's question is valid. The first person who asked the question is valid. It's tricky, but we have our ways. But you got to be smart about it. You got to navigate the system a little bit to find out. So that was kind of a rambling answer, but there are ways to find out. And there have been grand juries convened in this country to investigate that and have found that it's not insignificant. But the problem is what we learn is that, Jose and Marta and Maria and all these people who says in the voter rolls they voted, when you go talk to them, they didn't vote. What happened was somebody just cast a vote using their name. And sometimes those ballots were harvested in their neighborhoods. Sometimes they weren't even harvested. Sometimes they just printed them and used their names and submitted them. So I'm not, my mother passed away 5 years ago, right before I met you guys. And there were more non-citizens from south of the border at her funeral than there were gringos. So, I have nothing against these people. In fact, I don't want to prosecute these people. I don't have any interest in prosecuting any of this fraud. The reason we're finding fraud is not because we want to put somebody in jail. The reason we're finding fraud is to show that our election system is disenfranchising us from our rights, and therefore we're not going to use it anymore.
Great answer. And kind of piggybacking that, Martha asked, what if your sheriff is not on your side and not a constitutional sheriff? I'm afraid we have some good old boys here in rural Tennessee. And I will say that here in Pennsylvania, our sheriffs actually have no investigatory authority except for Allegheny County. So I understand that too, right?
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Karen, because I know your sheriffs in your state have basically made a deal with the state police, and it's basically neutered them. And in Delaware, same thing. They're like glorified dog catchers. They have no power. In Alaska, they don't even have sheriffs. They have boroughs. They don't even have counties. So I'm not saying that my plan depends on sheriffs. I'm not. I'm simply saying where I have good sheriffs, that's where I'm going first because that's an extra lever we have. We're not going to pick the hard places to land. We're going to pick the easy places to land, in Omaha Beach or Normandy Beach or one of the other beaches. We're going to pick the one that makes the most sense. And the sheriffs, I don't want to use names, but I was just last week, I was in a county in Colorado. And when the sheriff saw how much manipulation in the rolls there was, he was like, I want that list. I'm investigating that list. That's my kind of sheriff right there, okay? But we don't always have that. When I was east of the Cascade Mountains in Oregon, every sheriff I met over there, totally on board. They're like, I just want to tell you this story so bad, but I can't. But there was a sheriff there who witnessed the machines online during the elections. It was pretty awesome. And the clerk didn't even know it, but that's all I can say. So the question is valid. You don't have to have a good sheriff to make a stand. It's just nice to have a sheriff to make a stand. Now, when I was up in Alaska, there's a spit there at Homer. It goes way out into the ocean. And the FBI raided a person's restaurant there who was a J6er. And I was there. I visited them. I gave a talk, and there were about 40 or 50 people were in that room. And I had used that example as the tyranny of government, and we need to stand against it, because who's going to defend you because you don't have sheriffs? And as I was walking out of the door, this guy kind of leans over and he says, Dr. Frank, that's never going to happen again here. And I said, oh, why do you say that? And he says, because now we have a well-regulated militia. Okay? And so you don't have to depend on the sheriff to defend your constitutional rights. In fact, you shouldn't be. You should be defending your own rights. It's just nice to have a constitutional officer whose job it is to step in and interpose and defend you. That was a long ramble, but I think I made the point.
Absolutely. The next question comes from our other star in Alabama, Susan. And she asked...
Susan's awesome, too.
Right?
You guys, you got to keep your ear to the tracks. Alabama's about to come out. It's pretty fun.
Those two ladies are amazing.
They are. They hosted me down there, and I've been crunching Alabama data for them. It's just pretty. Keep your ears to the track. You know what's fun about Alabama to me? I know. Well, I got to hear Susan's question, but what's fun to me about Alabama is they haven't been pre-tainted. A lot of places like Georgia and Arizona and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, they were right after the 2020 election, they're just mobbed by attorneys and con men and data people. And what happened is, they're kind of all mucked up already. And I have to go in there and I have to change the way everybody thinks, and it's a lot more work. Alabama is full of these virgin counties. It's like nobody's ever been there. It's like I can go in and I can set them straight right from the beginning. It's pretty fun. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Susan. Susan's question.
They're workers too. They're amazing.
I love them. They're great. Yeah.
She asked, could Dr. Frank remind us what would be ideal for a state? Approximately how many small counties And how many Me Too counties would be sufficient when you're ready to come out publicly?
What a great question. So I didn't ever say what a Me Too county is. So they're going to be lead counties. Those are the ones who are drawing a line in the sand and saying to the state, we're not going to comply, and here's why. Okay, so those are the lead counties. Then there'll be other counties. So look at Oregon, for example. Oregon's got, the beautiful Cascade Mountains down the middle, and everything west of the Cascades is purple, or, well, not all purple, but there's red. There's some red, but there's a lot of purple and blue, like Multnomah, like where Portland is. Okay, all right. We're not gonna get Portland officials to stand up and say we're not gonna comply with the state. Portland ain't gonna happen. Okay, but they can be a Me Too county. In other words, Janice Dysinger, who's up there, is leading a team there, a 7 Steps team, and she'll have her binder. So when the counties east of the Cascades stand up and say we're not going to comply, they're the lead counties. And then the Me Too county, the people can stand up and say, hey, what's wrong with our leadership? We have the same problems here, binder. We have the same problems here that they have over there. Why aren't you defending our constitutional rights? So those are the Me Too counties. So you've got the lead counties and the Me Too counties. All right, so how many do you need? Well, it's war. The more you have, the better. When I left Oregon a month ago, and I'm going to be there again tomorrow, 32 of the sheriffs out of 36 had already signed a letter and sent it to the governor, telling him that they were, they didn't say it this way, but in essence, they're basically telling the governor they're going to comply with federal deportation. They're going to cooperate with ICE. I mean, that's already 32. And I always tell people, they say, what are you doing in Oregon? That's a blue state. No, it's not. It's got 36 counties. 30 of them are red. 3 are purple and 3 are blue. Fine. If I had my druthers, how about all 30 of the red counties? I mean, I'd take them all, right? But, think about it in practical terms. If you had even 10 of those counties, that would make national news. That would be earth-shattering. That would send the state into turmoil, even 10. So I would say, if you could have at least half a dozen standing up, that would be probably the minimum I would shoot for. I'll shoot for a dozen, but if I only get 6, we can probably get away with it. As long as it got Me Too counties chiming in afterwards. Think about what's going to happen. When a group of counties stands up and says, we're not going to comply, and here's why, there'll be other counties that go, well, gee, how come we didn't think of that? And then they'll join in too. So we'll have the lead counties, the Me Too counties, and don't forget me counties, the ones that join in after. So, everybody likes, when you get a movement started, people join. So I would say a minimum of 6. And the good thing about Alabama, they did the same thing in Alabama that we did in Colorado. We put together a leadership team. They decided which were the best, most likely counties for our beachhead, and they sent me there, and we got them organized. And we're still in the very formation phase in Alabama, and we're still kind of getting things together, but that should come together quickly. And they call it the Wiregrass down there in the southwest of the state. Bunch of small conservative counties, and they kind of all think they like standing together. So I would say 6. That was a long answer, but I needed to explain to Me Too and all that stuff. Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
When do I give a short answer, Karen?
That's good, though. Long answers are good because at least you explain it and people understand it. So I don't think that's a bad thing.
That's right.
I know that we're getting already to middle of the hour, so we'll take one more question and then wind down. Mark S. asks, where can the archivist or other team members get the templates for the fraudulent voting cases, illegal voting cases, etc.?
So form your team, and we'll connect you to other teams that are doing it around the country. And I think that's the best way to share it. And the templates, like I can send you like a PDF of what I just showed you with examples. And I think Amy, who hosted me last time, saw a copy of that. And she was like, ooh, this binder strategy is cool. Let's have them on for another episode. So we can send you that, and that would be some templates. But I think each state could kind of make its own mind. Don't get too wrapped up in legality either. A lot of times people say, "Oh, Dr. Frank, we have to have notary on all of our evidence," and I'm like, "No, you don't. You're not. If you read the 7 steps, which I didn't read at all, you're not giving this to anybody else. This is your investigation, and you're not going to court. I mean, if you need affidavits for court, you can go get them later. But right now, what's more important is to gather the evidence, make it unassailable, organize it, and stand together. Think of a soldier in the war. He doesn't worry about getting a notary on his forms. He gets his gun ready, and he puts shoulder to shoulder with other soldiers, and they go for it."
Absolutely. So, Dr. Frank, can you remind everybody where they can reach out to you if they would like to get a hold of you, get a team together, and start the strategy?
Here's how to follow me. This is all the different ways you can track me on social media. Take a screenshot of that if you want, or you can send me an email, drdouglasgfrank@outlook.com. And if you send me an email, I'll send you, like I said earlier, I've prepared this nice little checklist to get your 7 steps team started. One of my organizers last year said, "Everybody has the same questions, Dr. Frank. Would you please just get this organized?" So I organized that nice little checklist for people, and I'll send that to you. I was just looking for it quickly here. I can't seem to find it. There it is. There's a nice little checklist. So I would send you that. If you send me an email, I will send you the checklist, and I'll send you the 7 steps and trifold, so you can have both. And the checklist is pretty detailed. It even says that please don't serve me pizza when I'm on the road. And and the reason is because everybody wants to feed me pizza, and by the 13th time, it's just too much. Give me Chinese or Indian or something. So the right way to get a hold of me is right here. This is the best way. Contact causeamerica.org, get signed up, and that connects you to the national infrastructure right away, or you can send me an email at drdouglasgfrank@outlook.com.
Awesome. Dr. Frank, thank you. Guys, I will let you know, a lot of the stuff that Dr. Frank showed, like the trifold, some other trifolds, a bunch of different documents and things you can get on our library. You go to causeofamerica.org, click on the library. Like Dr. Frank said, if you want to get involved and you never have, click on that Get Involved tab on our website, and we'll get you connected with groups in your state. The other thing I will mention, Dr. Frank talked about it a little bit, is hand counting. We did a complete revamp of our hand counting section of our website. So if you've never been trained before, you can go on there, click on your state. We'll get you connected to a hand count trainer close to you in your area. If you have been trained and you want to train other people, go sign up on our website so that we can send people over to you. There's a lot of other awesome hand counting resources. We're working on putting state statutes up there. You can look at events, all that fun stuff on our website. But Dr. Frank, thank you so much for taking 2 evenings to talk to everybody. We so appreciate it. Everybody here, thank you guys so much for coming, and we will definitely see you guys next time. Have a wonderful evening.